What does it mean for a line of dialogue to deliver a payoff? For something that's said to deliver on something previously conveyed in the story. In the movie Gladiator, arguably the single most memorable line in the entire film is when Maximus takes off his helmet and says,
"My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix Legions, loyal servant to the true emperor Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next."
The line effectively carries the weight of the entire story leading up to that moment. The scenes we see of him as a general and a family man yearning to return home, the assassination of Emperor Marcus Aurelius, his own failed execution, his escape, his family's murder, his being captured as a slave and fighting as a gladiator, only to be brought to this moment right here, standing before the man who orchestrated these events. Now, that's a lot of stuff for one piece of dialogue to carry, but this isn't all that's required for a line to deliver such an immense payoff. By contrast, in the TV show The Wire, the single most memorable line occurs between Omar Little, the mythic criminal who robs drug dealers, and Eugene Levy, the attorney for Bird, the man Omar is now testifying against. Omar's testimony and Levy's ensuing cross-examination culminates with this exchange.
You are feeding off the violence and the despair of the drug trade. You're stealing from those who themselves are stealing the lifeblood from our city. You are a parasite who leeches off
just like you,
the culture of drugs. Excuse me? What?
I got the shotgun. You got the briefcase. It's on the game though, right?
What brings about this payoff is, well, not much in terms of history. It's a single conversation, albeit courtroom testimony, between two characters who have never spoken before and have no history with one another. Yet this single confrontation delivers such a massive payoff that it is one of the most poignant in what many consider the single most poignant show in television history. So, payoff can come from a massive buildup or little to none. But from these two examples, what's paid off does require it to speak to the work itself. In the example of Gladiator, what Maximus says could literally be an elevator pitch for the entire movie. The protagonist says who he is, what he's lost, and what his motivations are. Omar's line about Levy is basically a metaphor for the show itself, that you don't literally have to be a drug-slinging gangster to contribute to the myriad problems that plague inner cities. To be incredibly vain, I'm going to throw in something I've written, as an example of how all writers strive for payoff. It's probably one of the single best lines of dialogue I've ever written, from Noirlem. Noirlem, the long and short of it, available at Barnes & Noble, link in the description, is the story of Coleman Carmichael, an ordinary citizen who discovers his abilities as a detective in helping solve a series of connected murders. Early in the story, a police detective tracks him down to deliver some news, and in turn, Coleman tracks him down to do the same. The police detective asks him, "How did you find me?" as he never gave Coleman any way to reach him. To which Coleman asks him, "Well, how did you find me?" as he had never done the same. The police detective responds by pointing out that, well, he's a detective, meaning that finding out information about people is just what he does. To which Coleman responds with, "Well, then so am I," meaning that if that ability is what makes someone a detective, then he must therefore be a detective as well. It's a simple setup and payoff, but one that I'm very proud of. The sharpness, the exchange of banter, the logic, everything that typifies the world and story arc, as it did in the examples of Gladiator and The Wire. It's all there in a simple exchange. But there's one more example of setup and payoff that I want to show you. One that neither draws on the events of the story nor the themes of the world, but in fact constructs new ones, breathes life and depth into a story. Welcome to the world of Mr. Inbetween. Mr. Inbetween is, or was, a short-lived series on FX about Ray Shoesmith, a career criminal who never seems to fully commit to any role. See, he does criminal shit, but only in the sense that people sometimes ask him to do things for money, and sometimes he agrees. He's a father, but only with partial custody. He does horrible things, but sometimes his morals prevent him from truly being evil. Even his demeanor is wildly inconsistent, as he is often shown to be the picture of calm and cool, even laid back, until his anger gets the best of him. So, to summarize, he is someone who never has his feet firmly planted in anything. He merely reacts, and occasionally his reactor goes into meltdown. In Season 2, the vice president of a motorcycle club hires Ray to assassinate Vinny, the club's president and someone Ray knows. How does he know him? Well, he's obviously from the criminal underworld, but it's never explained because one of the things that the writing does really well is to let the audience fill in the blanks. But from what we know about Ray, we know Vinny isn't a close friend, or at least someone he knows well enough not to kill, because Ray hardly commits to anything or anyone. But while planning Vinny's assassination, Ray runs into him casually in a shop. Vinny not only recognizes Ray, but greets him warmly, like an old friend he hadn't seen in years. Later, we even see him call Ray in the hopes of properly catching up over a drink. A few episodes later, the assassination goes forward as planned, with Ray again appearing to casually run into him outside of the same shop as before. But when Vinny goes to greet him, he steps in front of a van whose doors suddenly open and they snatch him up. In other words, Ray used the fact that Vinny would see him and drop his guard against him, with one scene 3 episodes prior setting this up and paying it off. So as we often see when someone is going to be hit, they go for a drive. Only the dynamic is not what you'd expect. Ray sits in the back with Vinny. There isn't any rage, any tears, there's no begging or pleading for things not to be as they were. Vinny knows. He knows what Ray does, and this is going to be it for him. So, as was set up episodes earlier, when he called Ray about getting a drink, they catch up. They talk about this or that, quitting smoking and who wanted Vinny dead, before the conversation shifts to killing people and the effect that it has on you, when Vinny says this.
Lights went out of his eyes. 20 years and that bloke still comes to me in my dreams.
And Ray, always calm and cool, can only sit, smile, and occasionally laugh. Not because anything about the situation is humorous. See, it's funny. Not what Vinny is saying, but because to find something funny is to recognize it for what it truly is. So Ray can only laugh as Vinny tells him truths that only people like them can understand. That is, until Vinny says this.
You don't get that. Blokes do not come in your dreams.
And asks Ray a direct question, something he needs to know before he dies. And Ray says,
Sometimes. Doesn't bother you. Bothers the shit out of me.
You see, Vinny isn't back there struggling, yelling, or cussing out Ray, but what he needs in that moment is to feel some kind of connection. Even if it's about the people you've killed haunting you in your dreams, and even if that connection is to the man that's just about to kill you, he needs to feel understood in that moment. The van reaches its destination, and Ray walks Vinny to his death.
Top spot. Yeah. I'll see you in your dreams.
There it is. The loop is closed on the setup and payoff with the haunting irony that the man being made dead will live on, while the man who lives will live on in torment as a result. I don't want to say too much more about it though, because like the show itself, some things are just better left unsaid. But holy shit, that is a crack piece of writing and an unbelievable use of setup and payoff. Thanks for watching. And if you're interested in reading some more crack writing, you can find my book, Noirlem, at Barnes & Noble with a link in the description.